Greetings from a fishing village on the Atlantic coast. You've tuned in to Podcast Portwenn, celebrating the world of Doc Martin unofficially. I'm Chesla Wexler, and we'll be discussing Doc Martin, the medicine, the mayhem, and the marvelous people of Port Wenn. Before we get started, I'd like to thank everyone who has been watching the podcast, crushing the like button, subscribing, and commenting. We're a pleasant little community, and I look forward to producing more content for you. I'm also looking for guests. For the Best Medicine playlist, I'm looking for more unspoiled people, and particularly folks who would expand our demographics. I'm also looking for Doc Martin know-it-alls who are fans of Best Medicine for the spoiled segment. All demographics are welcome there as well. More generally, I'm looking for people who've never seen Doc Martin but want to watch it. It doesn't matter if you watch Best Medicine or not. You would watch all the episodes of a Doc Martin season, and then we would have a chat about that season. Believe it or not, those of us who've watched that show numerous times thoroughly enjoy living vicariously through your enthusiasm. If you think you're interested in any of these things, send an email to chesla@podcastportwenn.com. Thanks so much. And now, without further ado, I'm happy to say we've got the Unspoiled band back together for the season finale of Best Medicine, Season 1, Episode 13, Norway Know-How. Patty, Doug, Erica, welcome back to Podcast Portwenn.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Thanks for making yourself available. I know with all the vacations and everything, this was not, and business trips, you name it, this was not the most convenient thing. I just got out of a car after a 7-hour car ride about an hour ago, so thank you for being here. We'll jump right in. Let's start with Erica. Give the finale your ranking and your rationale.
I think I would put this somewhere in the middle. I had different ideas for an outcome that didn't happen, so that's not really fair to put on anybody because, it was what I was hoping, but it did kind of damper a little bit of the flavor of this episode. Overall, I liked how almost everyone in town was included at some point in this episode, which was nice as a wrap-up for the season, so you kind of got to check in with everybody. Medically, kind of gross, but that's it is what it is. I wish they could have shown some image of the hairy baby thing. Obviously, it wouldn't be real, but I just can't picture a bear-looking baby that grunts. Maybe I don't have a good enough imagination. I don't know. But yeah, I'd put it somewhere in the middle, pros and cons.
Okay, pretty good. How about you, Doug? You're clockwise as far as what I'm looking at.
Well, so I don't know if this was lucky or not, but so because of my trip, I watched episode 12 and 13 back to back on the same day. So that was nice because it had the continuity to watch it that way. I liked it. I would say it was an 8 or 9 for me. The doctor continues to impress. He does all the right things, regardless of whether they're popular or not. I love that. We can talk about him and Louisa later. Certainly, that took an interesting turn in the end, but I liked it, and it was I sat down and I enjoyed having those 2 episodes back to back.
Cool. How about you, Patty?
I liked it. I would say I put it maybe a little above half, maybe in the top quarter. Not my absolute favorite, but I did enjoy it. I'm not sure I can put my finger on exactly why. I did like Elaine more in this episode. Her coming clean about, hey, I didn't get into Juilliard. I was a little disappointed in the ending, partly because it seemed a little soapy, soap opera-ish. And of course, he's going to overhear them talking, and he was going to come and, say something to her, and then now he can't. And I don't know, that seemed a little cliche-ish maybe. And I think it would be a bad idea because Mark still would rather be with Louisa and she doesn't want to be with him. So I just think that would be a mistake. And I was a little surprised that she seemed to be strongly considering it. But anyway, yeah, I did like the episode.
Okay, good. For me, it was actually my favorite. So it knocked all my other ones down a notch. I just really, I laughed more at this one than I think I laughed at any of the others. And I just really enjoyed a number of the different scenes in this. We'll start with you, Patty. How about this? What surprised you?
I don't know if surprise is the exact word, but the first thing that came to my mind is the character, the one that was his ex-girlfriend,
Eden.
doctor. Yeah.
Mhm.
I had a slightly different impression of her in this episode than the previous episode, and it more matched what I think Erica thought. That I thought she just seemed snooty and full of herself in the first episode she was in. And Erica had said something like she was kind of like Martin, that she seemed a little like lacking in social skills, kind of thing. And I didn't see that as much in the prior episode, but in this one, I was like, yeah, she is like that. Like, what's up with her? She seems like unaware. So maybe that was just me surprising myself that I was unobservant the first time. I don't know.
Erica, since you were mentioned, what surprised you?
I had two pretty big surprises. One, I shouldn't be shocked, but I was quite surprised that his bully did report him to the medical board. I shouldn't have been. I shouldn't have been surprised, but I just didn't think that he was that callous and catty to go that far to potentially ruin the only doctor in the town because he didn't get his Norwegian salmon market. That was a little shocking to me. But at the same time, an interesting twist to pull you in to see what happens next season. My other big shock was that Martin actually stood up for the town against the Norwegians. And not only did he step up, he lied. Like, he just seems like such a straight shooter. He doesn't mince words. He gives it, diagnosis, and that's what it is. And here and quite convincingly, because I thought he was truthful until he then leaned over and said, "I don't have any, Senator." So that really surprised me as quite an interesting character arc and development of how he feels about the town. That not only did he stand up, but he did it by lying.
Yeah. How about you, Doug?
So the thing that surprised me, and I guess in some ways it's just something that I liked, is Mark seemed a little bit more normal this episode. And I've kind of accepted him for what he is, so it doesn't bother me that he's a wackadoo. But he seemed just almost like a regular guy this time.
Yeah.
This episode.
Yeah,
I mean, still wacky. He's like, oh, wait a minute, Back to the Future? Right, am I have to go boil some water and you get scissors and doing this again? But, typical Mark, I know, he is definitely growing on me.
Good.
I would agree with Erica that I was surprised by Martin. I thought the senator was real because it seemed like he was an important enough doctor in Boston that maybe he could know a senator. He could have, he was famous enough that he could have been the surgeon that worked on a senator. So I fell for that. And I was surprised that he could be that slick to deliver that so believably.
I think he was fighting fire with fire in a way, because I was also like, wow, Martin lied, and he lied for Port Wenn. Like, it just didn't seem like he was that attached to the village or the villagers. But when you think about it, the whole contract was subterfuge and deceit. So that might have kind of given him a sense of permission. Like, if they're going to lie to us and deceive us about what this is all about, I don't feel like I can't fight fire with fire. But that's how I excused it. Go ahead, Doug.
Well, and what he said after everybody left, or actually, no, when he was saying it, that the townspeople are good, kind, friendly, well-meaning folk, which I think is true. And that's true for a lot of small towns, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I think he was motivated by that.
Yeah. And Ludwig and Sigrid, I guess, must have trusted them because they seem to have left their children behind when they went off in the ambulance. Go ahead, Patty.
Yeah, when they said they had so many other kids, I was like, well, where are they?
Yeah.
I felt like it was like a lot of growth in Martin. It took 12 episodes or however many we've had for him to say those things about the townspeople. He never would have said anything like that in the first couple episodes. He just thought they were all, quirky and stupid, and yeah.
I guess they've grown on him. What were you expecting?
I did not expect the Norwegian salmon farm to be finalized in this episode. I thought it was going to go into season 2. So that was I guess maybe that's another shock. You can add that to the list. But my prediction was that it wasn't going to be resolved and it was going to have to go into the season 2. And so I guess I'm not good at predictions. I need to buy a crystal ball.
I threw a little theory out on some of the Facebook pages today, and I just said, I don't think they're gone for good, because if I recall, there were 2 copies signed. And Geneva had one, and Ludwig had one. Just ripping one is not going to make the whole thing go away. Got
Ripping
something?
up any contract is not going to make it null and void. That has to go through a legal process. So, but then again, I kind of consider it a sitcom in a way. So, they cut corners in little things like that.
How about you, Patty?
I think the change in Martin and sticking up for the townspeople. And it wouldn't have been very realistic if that happened in episode 3. So it took a while to get to that point, and that made it a little more believable. It's kind of hard to endorse lying, but I guess in some ways I was pleased that he could that he could think that quickly and be that, fast with it. I was impressed, maybe more than pleased. I don't know.
He certainly seemed, to Doug's point of how you like when he does the right thing and he does the medical stuff, he certainly seemed to be taking that tack for most of the episode of, medicine doesn't take sides, and, I'm just going to make sure I'm treating these people whether or not I think they're above board or not, because there's
Yeah.
a child, and,
Yeah.
so there's all that.
And that's the way a doctor should be, They have to treat criminals, That's just the way
That's right.
life of a doctor. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would go back to something I said earlier. I was kind of pleased that Elaine came clean about Juilliard.
Yeah.
And I have to say that did not surprise me.
No, when she was talking about a callback, I was like, seriously? Now, this is definitely a work of fiction. How about you, Erica? Did anything in particular strike your fancy?
I had 2 things actually that really pleased me a lot. With the first is that Aunt Sarah revealed this new sea urchin find that will bring them, the whole town, the money that they seem to be having expected from the salmon farm. So, I mean, really, it pleased me to have a plot point that I'm like really interested in learning more about that. And the other thing was a very small gesture, but it really made me smile, like just completely unexpected, when Martin got up from the table to go talk to Louisa about telling her, I guess he was telling her he loved her, or maybe more, I'm not sure. He pet the dog on the head on his way past. And I just thought that, like, it's just such a cute growth. We've seen him the last few episodes grow a little bit more, but such an involuntary, if you will. I know it's an acting, but like involuntarily, so to speak, pet the dog on the head as soon as he walked away. I thought it was cute. It really pleased me.
How about you, Doug?
I second what Erica said there about the dog. Yeah, I did pick up on that, and Copernicus is becoming a good boy now.
Yeah.
With
And-
a little bit of tender loving care from the doc.
Do you get a sense that Copernicus kind of is all in favor of the Martin Louisa pairing?
Well, he's certainly not in favor of the doctor from Boston.
Yeah. That growl was great. Just
Yeah, that was perfect. So the other thing that I very much enjoyed was Aunt Sarah. I don't know if my perception is that she came into her own in this episode, but it could be that I just couldn't remember the previous 11 or 12. But she reminded me of my mom's late cousin Joe, who grew up and was a New York lady, and she was a tough lady, very loving, very loving to her. I guess I was her second or third cousin, whatever it was, but she was tough, right? And if someone said nasty things to her, she gave it right back. And so I thought Aunt Sarah was doing that. And I really enjoyed that. So she is, she's a tough lady, but she's a tough lady, yet she was able to take care of the marriage ceremony.
I loved that little celebration of George and Greg.
I was just going to say
very
that
sweet.
when you said what pleases you, I loved the little wedding.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was sweet.
Go ahead, Erica.
I have a question for Patty. So you said you loved the wedding ceremony. I'm curious, are you are George and Greg growing on you a little more? Because you tend to think they kind of like they're not your favorite characters. So I was curious, did this like help you with them or no? Or
It wasn't as much them as the whole town doing this for them. So that's what just, kind of touched my heart. I like them okay. Actually, the previous episode with the plot that you didn't like about the bride and groom being eaten, um, even though that was weird, he seemed vulnerable and nicer than. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I somehow softened on him a little bit from that episode. So they're okay. I guess they're probably still not my favorites, but I still like them.
Okay, Doug.
Yeah, just following that, this last episode, it seems as though everyone got together and got along. And maybe it was, the combining of the town against the evil Norwegians. But, Al and Elaine, they got together, George and the other guy just got together. There seemed to be a closeness there. There was even some working together between Louisa and the doctor, or Louisa and Mark. It just seemed like this episode, everyone got along and was nice. There wasn't any of this.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that was intentional, being this season, season finale rather, to make all the characters look nice. So, look what a great town they have.
I wonder when you end a season and you don't know if you're renewed. Patty, go ahead. Do you want to make that point?
No, that's what I was going to say. I wonder if it was written before they knew it was going to be renewed. And
Oh, yeah.
if not, it's nice that they tried to tie some things together for instead of just like drop the series. Because sometimes when something ends unexpectedly and you're like, yeah, no closure.
Yeah. And it seems like we at least found out that Elaine won't be going off to Juilliard, right? And we at least believe that the Norwegian salmon farm thing is a non-done deal. But they still left cliffhangers. They left the cliffhanger of, will they, won't they, with Louisa and Martin, or Louisa and Mark, Martin and Eden, and then the whole, the big cliffhanger is, oh my God, there's real cause for Martin to lose his license. Because, unless some piece of paper is pulled out of the woodwork that says, no, Elaine has actually passed some class or taken some test or whatever, she really shouldn't have been pulling blood. I mean, we've been talking about that the whole season. Go ahead.
so I
Erica.
was thinking about that, and I'm thinking, what proof do they have that Elaine has taken blood? I mean, visually, yes, people have seen it, but as far as how do you defend against that in like a court of law, if it goes to before the ethics or whoever, I mean, other than eyewitnesses who everyone seems to be warming up to the doctor. I mean, I don't think Elaine is certainly going to go and raise her hand and say, yep, I've been doing them. She already said that she was afraid she was going to go to jail. As far as the other townsfolk, I don't think that they would be the type to jump up to get rid of his license and say, yeah, she's doing it and he's letting her. Maybe. I mean, we'll see how that flushes out. But I did also like the wrap up of, or maybe mostly wrap up of Al and his father, or I guess adopted father. I'm not sure how we want to call it now. And but that moment was really nice too. It was really heartfelt. It was hard. It's hard conversations. It started very accusatory, and then they were able to come back to a point of feeling, and I liked that too. So that was a nice wrap up for a season finale.
In what way do you think that that's wrapped up? Because I kind of feel like there's still things hanging there.
Well, Al seemed to be very upset about it at first. And then, and Bert was obviously very upset. But then when Bert came, kind of wore his heart on his sleeve and said, I don't know who your father was. I just stepped in and did it kind of thing. I thought that really seemed to calm Al down. Now, maybe he'll try to do some DNA searches or something down the road. But as far as the conflict between Bert not being Al's actual dad, I feel like that angst is over between them.
Does anybody else have a thought of that? Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, so I mean, there was a thing when he was with Elaine, when Al and Elaine were together, and Al was saying nice things about Elaine, and then the father said, "That's my boy." So I got the feeling that it had been smoothed over from the dad's side. Whether Al's okay, and I don't know. Everyone's, like I said before, everyone's seems to make nice at the end.
Yeah, I'll have to rewatch that one. Did you have a point you wanted to make, Patty, before I threw mine in?
I was just gonna say that I think it's over in terms of, the father explaining why how hard this conversation was to have and so forth. And I think he was telling the truth when he said, your mother never told me. The only way I could see it coming back up is if it's, somebody in the town that a character we know, and so that kind of comes out like if it's the what's the guy that turned Martin in? What's his name?
The
Oh,
bully,
Glendon.
Yeah. What if it
yeah,
turns out
the
to be
evil
him or
one.
something?
Yeah.
So, but otherwise, I think maybe that plot is done. I don't know.
Yeah, I had thought it was a little unresolved, and then I already did the Doc Martin spoiled people, and Chris had mentioned that he felt when Al had the double quotes around bingo, and Bert was saying, well, that's really when something really isn't. You only use them when you're sort of saying it's kind of bingo, and when Al sort of takes the quotes off the sign, it's like, are you really my father? Well, you really are my father. And Chris sort of thought that's what that was signifying. Okay, so what left you wanting at the end of this? I will start with Erica.
Honestly, I think they tied up enough loose ends for me and left a few open-ended that I really, not that I don't want to continue watching the show. I don't mean it in that way that I don't have anything wanting.
Mhm.
Obviously, I want more on the blood issue. Obviously, I want more about the medical license and Louisa and the baby and who's that going to be. But I felt like it was a very balanced ending to a season.
Yeah. How about you, Patty?
I really had my heart set on learning at least a little other nugget about the blood situation. So I was disappointed that that didn't happen. But, otherwise, I was not expecting a resolution. The Martin Louisa thing is going to drag on probably as long as the show live. But the blood thing, I just thought they could at least give us more hints and not spoil a second season. So I really thought we were going to get something more, but we didn't.
What do you think of Eden, Dr. Montgomery? Doug?
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So she seems pretty darn conniving. That's kind of my takeaway from it. But I mean, we just don't. I don't know much about her. I mean, so my knee jerk reaction is she seems like a conniving doctor.
I'm wondering about that because she seems to me very open. I came here to date you, Martin, which seems pretty open.
Yeah, that's true.
Talking about the season, the show overall now, since we've got a season under our belt, how have you enjoyed how the show has evolved? Patty, why don't you start?
I think I've enjoyed seeing the characters change a little bit. I don't think Martin could have stayed the way he was in the first episode and, continue to have a show. So there had to be some growth there, and there was, but not too much because, it's not going to be a total personality change, just some, adjustments. It took a while to happen, but I do like the little bits and pieces of normalcy we finally starting to see in Mark.
How about you, Doug? How have you enjoyed how the show's evolving?
I'm going to go back to my buddy Doc Martin, right? Does he does the right thing for the right reasons, regardless of the environment, and he's grown. I think, as Penny and Erica said, he's definitely grown in 12 episodes, just a little bit every time. So he's coming out of his shell. So I'd like to see that, but I can very much relate to him.
Okay, that's good. How about you, Erica? How show evolution, looking at it overall?
I think it's evolved a lot to the point where I was pretty shaky in the beginning that I was doing this and sticking with it because I committed to it, not so much because I was enjoying it. But that
Yeah.
evolved over, the first couple episodes, and as they started developing characters, and I now start to understand their nuances, and I kind of feel for them, and over the last few weeks, I've been finding myself excited to see the episode, to see what was gonna happen with particular people. I'm gonna go against the grain here. I have only disliked Mark more and more as the season has gone on. I know people like him. I know he is quirky and he's growing on a lot of people, and I love that because that means, he's doing something right. The whole point of being an actor is to make you feel something. So I guess we're all right because he's just making me feel irritated, but he's making everyone else feel happy. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's going to appeal to some and not others, but that it's interesting to think that even as time has gone on, he hasn't grown on you. Like it's actually been the opposite.
But I also think personality wise, Doug, you mentioned like you relate a lot to Doc Martin. And I've taken throughout work and stuff, you take these different personality tests like DISC and strength finders and everything. And if I was to put it in that context, he is the one personality that I would never connect with and have a very hard time working with. So maybe it's just who I am versus who he is, and maybe that makes me a not a great person, but
No, I mean, people can be oil and water,
Yeah.
and it's just how it can be.
I just
So Eric, you're saying that as it applies to Doc Martin.
yes.
Okay.
Like I think my personality is more aligned with Doc Martin, and he seems to also get frustrated with Mark. So that's just if I was to make a very, very analytical evaluation of it, I was very, very displeased when he suggested, I knew it was going to happen, but I was very displeased when he suggested that Louisa and him have a baby because that means he's going to be crucial in the next season, and that made me cringe.
I don't know where they're going to take that because we really didn't get a chance to see that plot line play out, right? It was sort of an offer and she seemed to be considering it, but then they moved on to Martin and him seeing them and overhearing the conversation. So we really don't know how that's all going to pan out. I'm going to throw out that I think that would be so bad just because, right? I mean, you're dealing with a guy who you have feelings for each other, but from Louisa's perspective, he's not somebody she wants to have be her husband. So do you really want him to father your child and co-parent with you? And is that going to tie you in a very unusual way to somebody? And then what happens if you start dating somebody else in the village and now everybody knows that very odd. I don't know.
It would be odd anyway, like even if it was just a friend. But I think the fact that it's an ex-fiance would make it way too odd for any future boyfriend. I don't know. I just feel like that's just weird.
Well, and you saw how
Yeah.
Mark reacted when the wedding didn't happen. And then again, how he reacted to seeing Martin and Louisa kiss. Now throw a kid in the mix of that. I mean, that could just be, I think that as the character is, I think he would be a very good father because he's goofy and he's funny and lighthearted and always full of energy. So as a father, from that perspective, I think he would be spot on. It would not be a bad choice. But it's clear that he still really loves Louisa, and I don't know if that's a mentally correct step to take to deal with your emotions, and I think it would just get really messy. But they also might want messy for the show.
Yeah. It should be interesting whichever way it plays out, right? Is this show, when you first started contemplating the idea of watching this thing, I mean, you knew that it was an American adaptation of Doc Martin, which was a show you'd never seen, but you'd heard good things about it. Did it end up being what you thought it was going to be? And I'll start with Doug.
Wow. I'm not sure. I had too much expectations, but I think I'll go back to the discussion we had many episodes ago about ghosts and how, I started watching that. The American version, loved it. And then they rolled a couple of the British versions, and I was like, what is that? So I guess I thought, I did think a little bit about that and was hoping that it would follow in that pattern, at least for the initial one, for the American version. So that's the analogy that I have there.
Okay. How about you, Erica? Is this what you expected it to be?
Well, I really had no expectations, and I'll tell you why. I didn't really know much about Doc Martin. I've discussed this in this podcast earlier. I don't have kids or husband or boyfriend, so when I saw the call for like, hey, does anyone have time to do this fun thing? I thought, sure. I've never been part of a podcast before. I'd love to give it a whirl, and I really didn't like give thought to what the topic was. As far as the show and how it turned out, I can't really say that I had expectations, but I can tell you that being on this podcast has exceeded my expectations. And I've
Oh,
learned a
nice.
lot about myself. I think I said this in maybe 2 or 3 podcasts ago that I'm finding myself watching TV differently, which is really nice, putting down the phone and paying attention to the details. So that was something I didn't expect to happen, and I love that happened.
Yeah, I didn't expect that either. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Eric. I'm watching TV a completely different way now, and way more critically than I used to.
Patty, I'm really interested to hear what you think because I know that your husband did some Doc Martin watching and you were really wanting to watch Doc Martin and you chose to do this instead. So,
Yeah, he would have it on. I'd walk into the room. Hey, you can't watch that now. I'm here. You have to watch that when I'm not home.
right, right.
I have to be true to my word for this podcast.
Yep.
I really didn't know too much about the original Doc Martin. Keith started taping it. I guess it must have been some kind of binge thing on some channel. I don't know. And so I was thinking, oh yeah, I've heard about that show. Maybe I'll watch it because I have surprised myself in the last few years. I used to say the only thing I'm interested in on PBS is Sesame Street, and my kids are long grown. But I didn't think I was a British mystery or British comedy kind of person, and I actually have enjoyed some British mysteries. So we've been I keep saying taping, recording.
Yeah. We're dating ourselves.
PBS shows and enjoying them. So that's why I thought, okay, maybe I will try Doc Martin too. So I really didn't have any expectations of what the show was going to be like. I knew the doctor was going to be quirky and maybe lacking some social skills. That's about as much as I knew about Doc Martin. And I was a fan of The Good Wife, so I still see him as the character he played in The Good Wife, and so who was not as quirky and did have social skills and so on. So a little bit of difference there, and I had to like view him as Doc Martin, Martin Best, not the character in The Good Wife. I enjoyed the show. I haven't enjoyed every second of it. There's, a couple things that I don't like. I can't say it's my favorite show ever, but I definitely have enjoyed it and would watch the second season of it, even if I, wasn't doing a podcast. And like Erica and Doug, I definitely watch TV differently and feel like I have to sometimes depends on what the show is. If it's something that isn't that great, I don't feel that bad for not giving it my full attention. But other times it's like, well, I like the show. I really should pay attention more. I really should be thinking about and noticing this and that. And
Yeah, if I had to talk about this on a podcast, what would I
Yeah.
say?
yeah. Yeah.
What do you want to see in season 2, Erica?
I would like to see, obviously, the development of Louisa and Martin. I would like to see where the sea urchin, millions are coming from. That seems really interesting. I would like to see more of Aunt Sarah. I really like her character. I'm worried about the house, but hopefully with the sea urchin money, that'll change. And I'm just looking for more character development. I think it's going to be really interesting.
Doug, how about you?
I would echo what Erica just said and then add it in the blood. Let's find out. But can we get to the bottom of the blood problem? How can this just be out of the blue? There must have been something other than, what we're thinking about with the car accident.
How about you, Patty?
I am curious to see how the lose your license because you let Elaine draw some blood works out, and I'm kind of guessing that it might be something kind of like what he did with saying, well, I got this senator on my side and there was no senator. the townspeople might, like refuse to testify or something like that, because I mean, pretty much he is guilty.
Yeah, they've got him dead to rights, don't they?
Seems, well, except that people would have to testify. I don't think they have any videos of it. And if people refuse to testify, I'm not sure what they can do. And I do think that they'd have trouble proving harm because she didn't mess up and hurt anybody. But
Right.
yeah, I think there's definitely going to be a lot about that. I mean, he has to come out okay, or there couldn't be a whole season, a couple of episodes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my biggest thing is, and I knew it wouldn't happen in this season, so in season 2, I'm hoping that it happens. I want Robert and Vanessa back, and I want that sit down where Martin and Robert and Vanessa talk through what happened to Rosemary and why it can't be spoken to. And, I have that personal connection to the whole idea of not talking about things that are crucially important. But that just fascinates me anyway. Like, it was just so I cannot and will not talk about her. And it's like, I just want to know, because it clearly has impacted this whole family's life. Even Aunt Sarah, right? Because, she notices it too. And then Martin having this experience where he was doing fine. Somehow he managed to get over that and put it away and suppress it, or whatever you want to call it, to become a surgeon, just to have it dredged back up and completely knock his career on its side. So that to me is, I didn't expect it in season 2, but I hope it's in season 2 and not season 3 or 4. They don't carry it forever. Is there anything that you guys want to talk about or ask each other about?
Yeah, so I may be making a stretch here, but at the very end of the episode, when Peter and the doc are sitting at the table, there were a few episodes where the doc says to Peter, sometimes you just got to trudge through it and work your way through something that's uncomfortable. And so Peter comes, sits down, gets a piece of cake, and then the doctor kind of ponders a bit and then gets up and goes to give his speech to Louisa. And I wondered if that was a connection to that previous episode where he was being the father figure who he ended up being to Peter.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, he's taking his own advice, in essence.
I wanted to make a comment about Dr. Montgomery. I think she's a lot more like Doc Martin in the fact that he's a little socially awkward, a little bit more to the point. However, at the end, when she walked in and she said something to the effect of, "I knew you'd call," or "I knew you'd invite me over," I can't remember the exact line. It's clear that the intention was to make it seem that there's maybe a hookup or something that's going to happen. But I looked at it like, I wonder if there's a different measure. We just had the scene before where Martin saw Louisa and Mark talking about, having the baby. Could he have called her over to discuss next steps? Like, what if it was me? What if, how does this work? How is Louisa? She's my friend, maybe more of a medical, so it's a good cliffhanger in that manner.
Yeah. And clearly he called her. So, like, we know that he called her. So you can make all sorts of assumptions about that. Like, is he hurt and, like, his heart is broken, therefore he's looking for solace in his old girlfriend? Who knows, right, Doug?
I don't think he called her at all. I think she just showed up. I mean, he it's not like he was waiting at the door. He had just walked in. I don't think he called her. I think the line of, "I knew you'd call," was just like, "I wanted you to call, but you didn't, so I came over anyway."
Like, I knew you'd call, so I just came over, like, assuming that
Yeah,
you did?
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
so
theory.
I don't think he called her at all.
Okay. I didn't even think of that, but I don't think that that's impossible. I think that that's very easily possible.
Of course, I don't like her, so,
Yeah.
And neither does Copernicus. Patty.
I found it interesting. Earlier, Doug said, called Dr. Montgomery conniving, and Erica said that she found her socially awkward. And I'm wondering, if you are conniving, can you still be socially awkward, or is you just evil?
There is that.
I did think I saw the socially awkward part of her in this episode, and towards the end, it did seem like I saw more conniving. So yeah, I don't know how that's going to play out, or if I don't know if that actress is signed on for season 2 or not.
She almost has to be part of it, I would think, don't you think? Because
At least for an episode or 2.
yeah. Well, I know that's one thing that you wanted, right? Was like she might
Yeah.
know the history there.
Yeah,
right?
I thought she would know that story, and maybe she does. And,
Maybe she does. We need a chance for her to tell it. I had the sense that from the episode 12 that they were dating and together, and then she was just as surprised as the next person that he bolted from town, and that she might not know enough details to have put 2 and 2 together on, well, I heard it was bloody and it was an 8-year-old girl, and that would be like Rosemary. Like, so it seemed like she might not know all the details, but
did you think they were still together when he
no.
had? Oh, okay,
Mm-mm,
yeah,
mm-mm.
because I
Erica.
didn't. Yeah,
I was wondering if maybe he did call her and it was about the license, getting some help and some guidance on, his medical license being under question. Here she is, another prominent doctor, worked with him in the past.
True.
Well, obviously they went to school together, so she knows his characteristics. She's in the medical field, so she knows about licensing. Perhaps he did call her and it was really just to talk through, I need some advice, I need some help, some direction. But of course, she came rolling into town saying, well, we're just going to get back together. I'm just here so we can date again. So we look at it. She thinks she's walking in because he's finally called her to rekindle. And maybe he called her more for advice than anything else. Because he didn't look like lovingly when she walked in. It wasn't like, oh, I'm so glad you're here kind of approach.
Okay, now this is great. I'm going to have to rewatch it. I thought they seemed very amicable and compatible at the Salty Breeze. And the fact that he had sent Louisa there shows that he has great respect for her medical abilities, right? Because he obviously cares for Louisa and wants only what's best for her, so that would fit. But there were a couple of things that I thought were just fun in the show. I had to laugh at the teenagers who were protesting, and George and Greg, like, this isn't protesting. You guys have no idea why you're here even. And I loved the warming of the rings. That just seemed really sweet. Have you ever seen that before at anything?
yeah.
No,
But I'll tell you,
lovely. But I haven't seen.
it was lovely. Yeah. As a software professional, I was trying to figure out how to scale it up to a big wedding, and I was thinking you could walk the rings down the aisle and like everybody could join hands, right, for that aisle. And, the last person, it's like electricity when you played, tag as a kid. One person, Kathy, who I interviewed for the second part of this, she had made mention of Glendon whistling in a Hall of the Mountain King as he left after telling Martin he was going to lose his license. Does anybody have that's got to be meaningful. It's such an odd song to pick. Anybody have a clue, like, how that might play in? Doug.
Yeah, only that there's probably something there. I mean, it was so unusual to hear him whistling, right? I don't think we've ever heard anybody whistling on that show.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what was that? But I can't make the connection.
Yeah. And a very specific, like, let me pick a particular song everyone would recognize.
I just took it as him being arrogant. He's a bully. We know he's a bully. Kind of walking out on like, look what I've just done. Dun, dun, dun,
Well, here we are at the end of our 13 episodes, and let's just assume there's no podcast. Are you guys watching this next time it comes out? Doug's a thumbs
Absolutely.
up. Patty's a thumbs up.
Without the podcast, I think I'm a no. If the podcast continues, I'd be more than happy to hang on.
Very good. In the meantime, folks, I'm not guaranteeing more content before season 2. I'm hoping to have at least some episodes. Please subscribe to the feed, set on your notifications so that you get notified if there's new content for this particular playlist. I will probably produce Doc Martin content, but like the episode, write comments in there. If you're interested in being on the show, it's Chesla at podcastportwenn.com. And so you guys, I am so grateful for your time, for agreeing to be here and sticking with me for the entire season. I hope it's been fun for you too. So thank you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having. My pleasure.
Anytime. Very good. Take care. This is your segue between the Unspoiled Best Medicine fan takes and the Doc Martin Savvy Spoiled fan takes. If there is anybody who does not want to have the Doc Martin spoilers, this would be the time that you would want to drop, because we will be making comparisons between Best Medicine and Doc Martin. So this is your final warning. Here for the Doc Martin fan deep dive into Best Medicine Season 1, Episode 13, Norway Know-How, are Doc Martin know-it-alls, Kathy and Chris. Welcome back to Podcast Portwenn. Thank you guys for joining. So I guess here we are at our grand finale for Season 1. Let's start with our overviews. Kathy, where would you rate this one with respect to all the 13 episodes you've seen?
Oh, you would ask me that. I probably like episode 9, which had Robert Best in it. That's my favorite. But this one's very good. So was last episode. I find that the further we get into the show, the better the episodes become, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
You know, I really couldn't stand episode 1, but they get better. I think each one gets better and better.
Yeah. What do you think, Chris?
I had a slightly different reaction. I think I enjoyed last week's episode more. And this one, I think there was too much happening, just too many things going on that I just couldn't focus. There were parts of it that I really liked, but overall, I'd have to rate this one a little bit lower down. Although it is, I think, still doing a good job finding its voice. But I think they sort of missed it a little bit in this episode.
Okay.
I found parts of this episode very silly. You know, I think some of the parts that were played for comic relief are just so silly that they're not funny to me.
And this was the episode that I probably laughed the most in. And I actually would rate this one, my favorite. My other rankings just moved down of the ones that I described from last week.
I'm not sure if I'm amplifying or extending Kathy's remarks. Yeah, there are things that happened that were silly, but I think they could have been, and this is sort of echoing my comment before, that there's too many things happening, that they could have made these things that were silly a little less silly if they'd sort of put more flesh around them. Good ideas, but sort of probably because there are so many things happening, they couldn't really give things their proper treatment.
Well, especially towards the end. I didn't find that there was too much going on until the very end, when it's almost like they tried to cram in all these little bits of plot just to end it so everybody had a place to be for next season. You know, I mean, they had the wedding with the 2 men. Then they had, of course, now that I'm thinking about it, then they had the baby being born, carrying her out to the ambulance, Louisa hugging Martin, and then going off, and all of a sudden she's talking to Mark, and Mark is saying, let's make the baby. Martin sees that, and he gets upset. And then they come and they tell him he's going to be investigated. And then, I mean, this is all in the course of maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Then they have him going back to his house where Eden comes and, you know, who's going to visit for the evening, for the night, who knows, but she's there to visit. And it was like all crammed in. But until that point, I really didn't feel like there was too much going on.
It did seem rushed at the end, I would agree. It seemed as if they wanted to leave. Certainly we got a lot of cliffhangers, right? We have, you know, Martin's going to be investigated. What's Louisa going to do about the baby? Is Martin going to get back together with Eden? Because they did seem pretty compatible when they were just hanging out in the restaurant chatting. We've got Al, who, I don't know how you guys thought about this, but in Doc Martin, we have the Albert father thing that gets sort of introduced and wrapped up, all I think in one episode, if I recall.
Yes.
In this one, they leave it as a cliffhanger. And one thing that I thought was very, you know, a little inconsistent of Al, I guess, is his dad lies to him or fails to tell him something pretty dramatic about his life and has a reasonable explanation for like, when am I supposed to tell you this? At what age do I tell you that you're not my biological son, right? So he's been lied to, and Al's very upset about this and doesn't like how he found out. But then Elaine has lied to him, and within an instant, all is forgiven.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. With respect to Al's dad lying to him,
Mhm.
that's similar to people who adopt children when they're very, very
Yeah.
young. It's at what age do you tell them that they're adopted and,
Mhm.
that you're not their natural parents? That's always a conundrum. And he probably didn't have anybody advising him as to what to do.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
doesn't seem like his
Right.
wife is around at all, or Al's mom. Like, we never hear anything about her, do
Yeah.
we? So we don't know if she's still alive or she passed away, or if they were even ever married. Like, we don't really know that.
Yeah, we know in
Mm.
Doc Martin that she died.
Right.
Mhm.
There's no mention here as to what happened to her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how did Bert know that he wasn't Al's father? Were they married? I mean, for some reason he took on the role of father to Al, but
Right.
how did he? She never told him. She never told him who Al's real father was. So
Right.
how did he know? There's a whole lot of story there.
She.
In the TV show. In Doc Martin, Bert says she had like basically a one night thing.
Right.
And he never even knew whether he
Mm.
was Al's father or not. And frankly, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but at the end of that episode, Bert's name is on the birth certificate.
Right.
But for all we know, he might not be the father, because that's just what do we learn her name? Mary is what I want to say.
Mary.
Yes. Okay. So as far as we know, she might have just written that because it was a one night stand. And as far as she was concerned, Bert Large was the father of their children. And here, who knows? Did she have a one night stand? Did she have a long standing relationship with someone else? Was she cheating? We don't know that. But what other plot arcs did you guys see from Doc Martin?
Well, at the very end, when they say he's going to be investigated, that's
Hmm.
from Doc Martin.
Surely. Completely different reason.
Right. Doc delivering the baby at the last minute was a reference back to when Doc delivered the baby of Louisa's bridesmaid.
Yeah, because he'd never delivered a baby before there either, right?
Right, right.
Chris, did you
See, I
have one?
had
You seem to be.
Martin Ellingham would never have had his patients have blood drawn by somebody who wasn't licensed or fully able to do that. So Martin Ellingham would sort of never be subject to somebody's blackmail on such an account. Yeah, whereas Martin Best, too embarrassed about his blood phobia, he lets Elaine do these things because he doesn't think that he can really do them or can't bring himself to do them. So he's sort of put himself into this, whereas Martin Ellingham would sort of never be there for that, or that would not be something that would happen to him. One sort of plot arc or plot twist that comes up is in Doc Martin. Basically, the whole village knows about Martin Ellingham's blood phobia due to the presence of one of his former students.
Adrian
Adrian
Pitts.
Pitts.
Adrian Pitts, the redoubtable Adrian Pitts. Yeah, so the whole village knows. In Best Medicine, it's really a select few. It's Elaine, for obvious reasons, Louisa, that he just came clean with. I'm not sure if Aunt Sarah knows.
it.
I
So
don't think
so it's
so.
and is it Gordon,
Glendon.
the bully?
Glendon. Well,
Glendon.
Glendon knows
Glendon.
now.
Yeah, now. And I think he picked up on that actually pretty quickly towards the beginning of the run of the season, that he was sort of familiar with that. And he was sort of like, I won't tell this if you don't tell that, something like that. So it's a very few number of people who know in Port Wenn, in Best Medicine.
He suspects early.
He
He
suspects
suspects
something
he
happened.
suspects. Mhm.
But he doesn't know it's
Yeah.
blood. He knows that Martin left Boston in a hurry, and he was going to go dig into why, and that there was some surgery that went wrong. I'm pretty sure that's how that was.
Yeah, I find this Dr. Martin, Dr. Best, so much more easygoing, amiable, agreeable. I mean, he does things in this episode, at least,
Likable.
likable that Martin Ellingham would never do. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he wouldn't walk a pig, although he did talk about having to judge farmers looking like they're pigs.
Yes.
But I don't see him
Mhm.
walking a pig down the aisle at a wedding.
Yeah, I think Martin Best is a much more likable, approachable, sympathetic character. I like him. Doc Ellingham, Martin Ellingham. I can't say even now that I like him. He's very prickly.
I found him intriguing, you know, and that's what
Sure.
got me into the show. Is like, what is going on
Yes.
with this guy?
Yeah.
You know?
And
And
I
then he
loved him.
gradually loosens up.
Oh yeah, intriguing, interesting, but I can't say that. And I see certain parallels or similarities with myself, but likable, I wouldn't use that word.
Well, I've started watching Doc Martin again, just because I'm trying to contrast, and he is much grouchier and unpleasant. At least in the first, not the first episode, first episode, but like the second series, he definitely starts being much more miserable, a miserable git, they would say.
Yeah. For
Yeah.
some reason, I just liked him from the get-go. And I don't know if I just recognized the damage and figured he had some sort of a reason for it that would become clearer. I did not excuse his behavior to people, but somehow I still liked him. And then I
Well, the
liked him the
very
whole
first-
time, although I preferred the early season ones to the later season ones.
The very first episode I ever saw was when his parents came to visit. And his mother told him, you know, that he ruined her life. And it was sort of
Well.
like, so from the very get-go, I knew that I knew some of what was going
Sure.
on. And that's what really got me into the story.
And I feel sorry for Martin Ellingham. His upbringing, his just terrible parents. Yeah. So I do feel a little sorry for him.
He doesn't even realize that he's damaged.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I was beaten as a kid. I'm perfectly fine. Yeah.
Got locked in a cupboard, didn't do me any harm.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I know, craziness. But
Well, just branching out of this difference between Martin Ellingham and Martin Best. In this episode, towards the end, Martin Best gives a spirited defense of Port Wenn to the Norwegian man, Ludwig, I think, and
Yes.
saying that Port Wenn is full of good people. And here you were in trouble and we tried to help. I cannot imagine Martin Ellingham giving any similar type of defense of the Port Wenn and Doc Martin.
Yeah.
Those people. No, he couldn't. I don't see him doing that either.
Those idiots.
What's wrong with you people?
Yes. Yeah, these
Spread
two shows are
confusion
really
like wildfire.
divergent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
They spread infection like a bushfire.
Yeah, things like that.
Yes.
And you can see sort of a presaging of that defense and indeed the way Martin Best feels about Port Wenn when he's talking to Eden and she's asking for sort of an explanation of things. And he says, well, it has to do with Port Wenn and it would take too long to explain. So you can see that he has some sympathy there for the residents of Port Wenn that is totally lacking in Doc Martin and in Martin Ellingham.
One little thing I noticed that made me think about Martin Ellingham was during the wedding, Martin Best was sitting by himself at the table. Just for a short while until Peter came up and gave him some cake. But he was sitting there by himself, and it reminded me of when Martin Ellingham was sitting by himself at Elaine's parents' wedding. It was a very short moment, but it was like, oh,
Yeah.
wonder where they're going to go with this. So he was still kind of the outsider.
Right. And he's looking at all the other couples there that are having fun and interacting and probably either reflecting on his own situation, maybe feeling sorry for himself. Who knows?
I just got the sense that he didn't dance. I just thought he's not a dancer. They're all dancing, and he's just sitting in there because he doesn't dance.
But he danced
And
with
he has no
Glendon.
partner.
So he was dancing with Glendon, but it was extremely awkwardly done. I don't think he really likes dancing. But
He didn't want
I
to do
do
it.
agree with you, Kathy. That reminded me also of when Martin's just at a table by himself at Elaine's parents' weddings. As far as other plot archy things, Glendon, when he does the sort of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours bribe with, I won't tell anybody about your blood phobia if you support me with this salmon farm, was straight out of Bernard Newton. You don't tell anybody about my macular degeneration, and I won't tell anybody about your blood phobia.
I didn't pick up on that. Excellent.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was like bam for me. And the only other plot arc I think I picked up was sort of like Eden arriving right when it seems like there's a wedge in the Martin Louisa thing because she wants to have this baby and he's always drawn to her, the sort of push-pull that they always have. But then when he sees Louisa with Mark talking about making a baby, he's like, okay, this isn't going to happen again. And here's Edith. Now, of course, in Doc Martin, Edith is there purely as a colleague, and we never really get a sense that Martin Ellingham is being attracted to her, even though there's a little kissing involved. It seems very one-sided to me in Doc Martin.
Yes, very one-sided.
Yeah.
But I don't get the impression that Louisa's convinced that Mark should be the father of her baby. Mark wants to do this, but she's
Mark,
really?
Mark is offering, I think, to have a baby, to be a parent, but I'm not sure what more he's offering there. So he's just trying to be supportive. Yeah, and as you said, Chesla, Mark he tries to do nice things for people. So I think that sort of is part of his nature. He's offering that. And of course, his history with Louisa.
I got the impression that he was offering to be the father, not necessarily as a donor, not necessarily the other way, as what's her face would say.
I don't know how it would go because clearly they've been together for 8 years, so it kind of seems like, this would not be one more time or 10 more times, but not exactly. So who knows, right? Who knows the manner of conception? Right. But certainly he did say as friends, and he also, but not for nothing. I mean, you parent a child together and you have feelings for each other. Who knows what he's really hoping for? But I would be comfortable with what you said, Chris, where he's willing to do this as a friend. But boy, that'll be one odd dynamic in the village if Louisa ends up like dating someone else, but her child is Mark's.
Right. Yes. Yeah. It almost seems like it should be an anonymous donor kind of thing.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure at some point, if they follow the arc from Doc Martin, Martin Best will end up being the father, one way or another.
Yeah.
We don't know how.
Well, getting back to the whole Martin Ellingham versus Martin Best and how Martin Ellingham would never have let an unlicensed person draw blood. How does Martin Best get out of this? I mean, that has got to be a really bad offense.
Yeah. Good question.
Maybe he has to go through some kind of, not therapy, but penance. Probationary period where he doesn't do this anymore. And maybe they force Elaine to go get a phlebotomy license.
I was going to go there because to me that is Elaine moving into her Pauline phase, because I've had this theory that we have Elaine for the duration of the series and she goes through her Elaine being irritating as Elaine being helpful as a phlebotomist as a Pauline, and then Elaine being incredibly supportive and very much a friend and colleague of Doc Martin.
I'm thinking there may be some sort of a test for a phlebotomist that they could administer to Elaine. And maybe she shows that she's an excellent phlebotomist, but will need to be licensed.
Yeah, I think she's going to have to get a license now. How they're going to work that out, I don't know.
Yeah. I'll have to turn into research mode and look into all the training you need to be a phlebotomist, because you probably can't just take the bar exam And be a lawyer.
Exactly. As a lawyer, accepted as a member of the bar. Yeah, you probably can't do that.
Well, you might be able to.
Which
Yeah, I actually think
brings-
you might be able to, but I don't know. I doubt you can do that as a medical professional.
I wouldn't think you
Hmm.
could do that as a medical professional because there's
Yeah.
too much skill involved. It's not just cerebral
Mhm.
like it would be for a lawyer.
Yeah.
What
Well,
was
sort
left
of,
hanging that? Go ahead, Chris.
I was just saying, as a medical professional, something that a nurse could be doing. I mean, a nurse might draw blood, but
And
they
have
would
a
be trained.
certificate.
Yeah.
What was left hanging? Well, obviously Martin's
A lot.
inspection. You know, there's one. You know what else is Aunt Sarah discovering
Oh, the sea
the
urchins.
sea urchins in the ocean? Are those valuable?
Yes, I looked it up, and it seems like it has a very short shelf life, but it is eaten and it is prized.
Mm.
So it's possible that this could be a real good cash crop for the fishing people there, and maybe that'll be the explanation for how Aunt Sarah saves her house.
Yeah, she'll be able to buy it from.
She can't pay for it with lobsters, but she can pay for it with sea urchins.
So are Eden and Martin going to get back together? You know, that's something. If we weren't Doc Martin people, we would be wondering.
And as Eden goes into the house, she says, "I knew you were going to call." So he obviously has called her. So,
And it was she's got no research paper going on right now, so this was
No.
not a let's talk shop.
And she did bring a bottle. I wonder what it is.
yes.
Yeah, sparkling apple cider.
Yes, that's
Maybe.
my guess.
Yeah,
So.
this is such a different show. I can't imagine that they would not have the Martin Louisa thing be the main romance. I really just can't see that happening. But Martin Best and Martin Ellingham are two completely different people. Louisa Glasson and Louisa Gavin are two very different people. This show could go any direction as far as I'm concerned. And frankly, I don't care which way it goes because I like it enough now to keep watching, podcast notwithstanding. I am enjoying the show, and hopefully it will be on the path that it's on where it is getting better. I do hope that they're able to take feedback from this season and make some tweaks. But if there's a large demographic smack dab in the spending public that loves Mark, they're not going to change Mark because they want those advertising
Mark
dollars.
in this episode.
I did too. I thought he was very good.
Yes.
Not crazy.
Yes, he was
Stupid,
not
silly.
crazy. Well, he was a little bit crazy when the babies were being born, but
That was funny, I thought.
Yeah. Chewbacca.
Well,
Don't
being
laugh.
torn in a space-time continuum, Back to the Future. I thought he was being pushed around by the plot line in that one, but I thought it was funny.
I had
I still don't know.
a Mark defender online. She said she was a teacher and that she really liked she disagreed with what we had said in the episode 12 podcast where I think Patty had said, I just want to, take these teens to task, and why hasn't Martin done that yet? And a couple of us were all on the same page for that. Mark being ridiculous, and she was like, no, I really love Mark and the teens are great. And then after last night's episode, she said, I get it now. Mark is too silly. I don't like him anymore. It's like, really? Because I thought he was pretty okay last night. So it's fun how everybody's positions can change. So hey, whatever, right?
Yes.
I did like how Louisa was portrayed in last night's episode. Probably the best that I've seen, or I think of Louisa through the series so far, is she sort of knew what it is that she wanted, and she's confused about some things, but she didn't seem sort of off the wall or scattered. She seemed, I thought, fairly together.
Yeah, fairly grounded. Yeah.
What do you think happens with Martin and Eden and Martin and Louisa in season 2?
Well, I'm hoping that Eden stays around for season 2. I'd hate for her to.
It looks likely since she's.
Yes, it does. I'd love her. She's a wonderful triangle. They'll make a marvelous love triangle, whatever.
A love square, maybe, if you add Mark in.
Yeah. I can't see Eden going for Mark, although stranger
Oh my
things have
gosh.
happened.
No.
Stranger things have happened.
Yeah.
I was worried about the babies towards the end when they took Sigrid out, but the babies were still in the hall with everyone else. And it seemed to me like it was a good many minutes before finally at the end, Mark and Louisa took the babies out the door. So hopefully they got to hospital as well.
Yeah, I mean, they left their kids with total strangers who were not really happy with them.
But they were good people.
Yes. You could trust them.
Right.
Yeah. What was
What
his
about-
name?
Ludwig.
Ludwig.
Yeah, he was definitely under Sigrid's thumb.
Yeah.
He was
my
afraid of
princess,
him.
my queen. Right. Yikes.
I like the way Martin pronounced it.
Yeah. I wonder what's going to happen with Al, because Al got into all those different schools in New York.
He may go away
Well-
for 6 months or a year, just
Yeah.
like Mark did in Doc Martin.
Oh, Al, you mean?
Al.
Like Al
Yes.
went to like Africa or something?
Yeah, somewhere. Yeah, he went traveling.
Mhm.
And, he ended up sleeping rough
Right.
and eating whatever he could find before coming back. But, it's possible they'll have Al go away for a little while and then come back. And,
That's totally different from my prediction, which was
Oh, really?
Elaine going off to New York City, which is totally shot, and having Al stay around. Now, maybe it'll be switched, where Elaine stays around and Al goes to New York City.
or it's possible that either one of them could. Elaine could still go and try her luck,
Yeah.
on just auditioning for various roles and see what comes of it.
I hope she
Mhm.
doesn't, because boy,
I know. I
Yeah.
don't want her to go either. I've finally grown to like her. I've also grown to like the doc. I didn't like him earlier on because he was just too bland. The last couple of episodes, I've really gotten to like him.
Martin.
Martin,
Yeah.
yeah, I've really gotten to like him. So, it'll be interesting to see what he has to do to maintain his medical license.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's definitely going to be a plot point. I think that Al and his father are still going to
Mm.
have to, come to some kind of resolution.
Mhm.
They have to navigate through that. Bert seems very sad that Al, just like Bert did in Doc Martin. I mean, Bert was crushed when Al was treating him like not his father, because he never
Yeah.
thought of him as anything other than his son and loved him to death. And Al really hurt his feelings. And I think Bert and Al, Auntie Joan straightens Al out, if I recall, because he goes to talk to her and he's upset, and she says, well, basically gave him a hard time, right?
Yes.
Which
Yes.
was right.
Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see if Sarah does that with the new Al.
Mm.
She might not. Who knows?
Mm.
But it is becoming a very different show from the original,
Yeah, I agree.
which is good. For a long time, well, I was finally getting used to it just being a new show. It's being its own show. And then last episode, when Mark had the auto brewery syndrome, and I saw it right from the beginning. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is going to be auto brewery. Ho hum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wanted something else to go on. I wasn't ready for that. I was ready for them to move past the Doc Martin plot points, which they did this episode.
Right.
I loved the wedding.
Me too. Yeah.
Yes.
The wedding was very good.
And I love the look on their faces when they walked in and they were complaining about we wanted it to be a
Yes.
surprise, and then it was.
It was a huge surprise. Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
And we got
Yeah.
him to cook for his own wedding.
Mhm.
Which is great. And that ring warming thing was so sweet, where everybody just,
Oh,
gives
that
them a
was
wish.
also good.
You should adopt that in every wedding, if you have a small number of people. Otherwise, boy, that'll take a long time.
Yeah, I've never heard of that before. That was very sweet.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love the fact I am not easily surprised when it comes to plot lines. Chris will tell you, I'm constantly
Yep.
just turning to him and saying this. And he'll be like, and then it happens. He's like, how did you know that? I'm like, it was just right there.
Did you write this episode?
It's like, I didn't. And I think that they pulled that wedding off so well. I did not see that coming at all.
Yeah, I didn't either. It was
Yeah,
very well.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
set us up to believe that it was a surprise party for Sarah, and then totally switched that on us. It was very good.
Yeah.
Very- I actually liked Bert in this episode quite a bit. He was showing good sort of human emotions that the son, the person that he's been raising as his son, is now questioning why he lied to him for all these number of years. And he's understandably hurt and sort of chagrined and a little uncertain. And I thought they did a really good job. I thought he did a really good job with it, and would make me. I think they should do more things with Bert.
I have
So,
always liked Bert.
mm,
I've always liked Best Medicine's Bert.
mm,
I know a lot of people don't, but for some reason I really like him.
I like him too. I mean, he does a very good grifter, which is
Mhm.
what he's
mhm.
supposed to do, and I liked him as a character the whole time. And of course, George is
Mhm.
still one of my absolute favorites. I just really like
Yeah.
George. One thing that I found hilarious, and it's a social comment, and I'm sure it was a social comment in the show, so I'll mention it. But the kids are protesting and have
I was gonna.
absolutely no idea what they're protesting. Like the minute you scratch the surface just a tiny little bit, they're clueless about what they're protesting about. And I just thought, well, isn't that a social comment?
I like that actually. I thought that was one of the fun parts of this episode. I think it could have been fleshed out a little bit more, but I thought it was funny, and that George and Greg were saying, "This is no protest. That's you're just letting this guy in. You should be like a human chain, keep him out." And trying to get the kids to understand that they need to have more passion in what they're protesting. And then at the end, calling the cops on them and saying, "Well, you got to go to jail.
That's
That's
right. Well,
that's part of protesting. You need
right.
that experience."
And Liam, when Liam says, "What do you know about protesting?" And here's these two gay guys who have been able to get married. Like, you have no idea how we have changed the world.
So I think the kids have grown up a little bit.
Hmm.
They weren't as snarky as they usually are, and they were trying to make a statement.
Mhm.
They may not have realized what they wanted to say, but they were trying.
Yeah.
So they've grown up a little bit.
Great
If
unity in
they'll-
Port Wenn.
I wonder if they'll stay grown up or if they'll go back to their snarky ways.
Mm.
The Doc Martin teenagers, the girls, change every season. Their new ones pop up. And that makes sense because they would be growing up and they would be moving on to other things. And I wonder if this group, these three teenagers, will move on or if they will stay constant throughout the show. It would only make sense for them to, they could grow up and have other roles in the town, but not necessarily be the snarky, teenagers.
Yeah. Well, are you going to continue watching
One-
the show, Kathy?
Yes, I will.
Yeah. How about you, Chris?
Yes. I was going to mention one other thing that I liked is Copernicus, that he showed up at several points in this episode when that Martin Best was feeling kind of low, and Copernicus comes in, and maybe he helps cheer him up. In Doc Martin Ellingham would not be cheered up by any dog coming to him. But in Best Medicine, Martin Best, I think, does take some solace in Copernicus's companionship. And it's kind of funny at the end of this, where Copernicus is on the stairs and sees Eden go by and gives a
Yeah, Copernicus is rooting for Louisa.
Copernicus does not like her. No.
No. I mean, and I'm sure they're trying to communicate something to us. If the dog doesn't like somebody, dogs are good judges of character. And the dog in Doc Martin, the dogs always follow Martin around. They always did.
True. Yep.
Right? So they're good judges. And he is a man of Martin Ellingham is a man of excellent character.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel unfulfilled not knowing what happened with Rosemary's accident.
Not yet.
I'm wondering if Eden will clue us in, if she has any knowledge of it. Since they dated for so long,
Yeah, true.
he may have
I
confided in
would
her.
guess not, but
I want to see Robert and Vanessa back because
Me
we
too.
need to understand why Robert cannot and will not talk about
Mhm.
her.
I agree. I want to see them back as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for obvious reasons, but I really want that plot line, and I want that plot line told by the principals. I don't want to find it out from some ancillary character like Eden. That's just me. Cool. Well, I am very grateful that you guys were willing to join me today, and I hope folks in watching and listening land have enjoyed this. If you did, I hope you will subscribe to the feed and like this episode. I make no promises on frequency of Best Medicine related episodes between now and when the next season comes out. If I can come up with something that sounds interesting and would not waste your time as a viewer, I'll try to produce that. But in the meantime, I hope you guys have enjoyed this playlist, and we will certainly see you next season. Thanks for joining Podcast Portwenn. Podcast Portwenn is an independent fan production, not affiliated with, endorsed by, or sponsored by Buffalo Pictures, ITV, Fox, or the creators of Doc Martin or Best Medicine.